How's it going, folks? I'm Matthew. This is Lemora's Cards, and today we're going to be talking about my favorite deck, and that is Rograkh and Thrasios, otherwise known as Rog Thras, Sci-Fi Wasabi, Rograkh's Bouncy House. There's a whole bunch of cute little names for it, for all the different versions. And today we're going to be going over what is so great about this deck, what makes it tick, why we run these commanders, what's the goal of it, how to play against it, and why maybe you should try it out. If you enjoyed this video, let me know down below what you like about it, what you didn't. How do you think I should handle deck techs going forward? When I've done the super edited versions of them, they don't tend to do very well, and a lot of times they get outdated really quickly and they're not really worth the time investment. Always interested in hearing the kind of content that you guys want me to make. Consider liking, commenting, subscribing, all that good stuff. And thank you as always to my amazing patrons over on Patreon, whose support helps me make videos like this regularly for you guys to enjoy. If you want to support me, enjoy the stuff I make, and want to get access to perks over there, check that in the description below. And I think with all that being said, we can go ahead and hop into it. Use the link in the description below to download Whatnot, and you'll get $15 to use to buy Magic singles, sealed product, get anything that you want really. There's no limits. You just get $15 on the account for free just for signing up. This is one of the best ways you can support the channel. And again, it's just free stuff. Use the link in the description below. Give Whatnot a try. First thing I usually get is why play Rog and Thras? What do these commanders offer? Why play Rograkh? He doesn't do anything. First of all, he does nothing. Okay, it's not that he doesn't do anything. And there's a couple reasons for this. If you play Rog Sci, any Roger deck, you know having a 0 mana commander in play, a body you always have access to, is incredibly powerful. In Rog Sci, they use it as sack fodder. They use it to enable cards like Fierce, SWAT, and now Flare of Duplication, things like that. Here we use it similarly. It enables a lot of those same cards, but we don't use Roger for sack fodder. We really just use him to up our creature count and have access to more creatures in play. He makes cards like Paradise Mantle, Springleaf Drum, things like that, powerful to run, gives you a little bit more consistency with the deck. We are also a very dedicated Gaia's Cradle deck, and getting to go turn 1 Roger and Thrasios, which you get to do a decent amount of the time in this deck if you're not doing anything else, you know, more impactful than that in your opening turn. That into turn 2 Gaia's Cradle, it's very good. It's really strong. We have access to lots of cheap creatures too. Pump that Gaia's Cradle count up, break cards like that, and also the more creatures we run, the better our creature tutors become. Cards like Neoform, Eldritch Evolution, etc. are a lot better when you have cheap commanders and a whole bunch of different toolbox utility creatures to run. What these commanders provide other than their colors is they actually work really well with winning the game, both of them. Beyond just turning on your protection spells, things like that, Rograkh offers a pretty unique ability to go infinite with Cloudstone Curio. So for kind of the premier combo of our deck that we get to do a little bit better than anyone else is using Cloudstone Curio with Dockside Extortionist. If we have a Dockside count of just 3, we can cast Dockside for 2, make 3 treasures, bounce Rograkh to our hand with the Cloudstone Curio trigger, recast Roger for 0, bounce Dockside to hand, and we've netted 1 treasure. This lets us make infinite treasures, get infinite mana of any color. And who else we got in the zone? We've got Thrasios, who is mainly here as an outlet. We use him as an engine every now and then. Kind of is ideal as an outlet, and that's the biggest thing about it, is this deck can generate infinite mana easier than most with combos like Cloudstone Curio and Dockside, as well as Cloudstone Curio, Cloud of Fairies, and Gaia's Cradle. If you're able to go mana positive with that, tapping your Cradle for 2, again, using Rograkh to enable that Cloudstone thing. We also get access to, in these colors, of course, cards like Kinnan that get to go infinite with a Basalt Monolith. We have other ways to loop Dockside Extortionist with a card like Baron Master Wizard or Temur Sabertooth if you want to run that card. Up until really recently, I was on Hullbreaker Horror, which is another card that is fantastic at generating infinite mana kind of out of nowhere and leads to, oh, what do we do with it? Pump it into Thrasios, we win. Another combo that we have access to is with Devoted Druid in combination with Machine God's Effigy. If there's a Devoted Druid in play that anyone controls, you can cast Machine God's Effigy, have it enter as an artifact version of Devoted Druid. When you put the -1/-1 counter on it to untap it, it won't die because it's not a creature, and you can make infinite blue and green mana by tapping and untapping it over and over. You can also do things with Eternal Witness and Snap with Gaia's Cradle. And then the way that we win, usually going to be with a infinitely large Finale of Devastation, which you're probably used to seeing. Or we can do some things where we loop Eternal Witness and Lightning Bolt. Those are going to be the main ways you do it. You can run more ways, like a Tali as an outlet that is really hard to disrupt, gets around 1 ring protection, gets around pretty much everything. Currently, I'm not on a Tali, but it is really cool, and I love that big dinosaur, and it's a very powerful card in this list. We also if you're running it, have access to Blank Goblin or Mind Goblin, whatever you want to call him, who again goes infinite with Cloudstone Curio, which makes Cloudstone Curio kind of the ideal target for comboing in this deck. It's kind of the thing that we get to do better than anyone else because of Rograkh and Thrasios. They're the best at helping generate infinite mana with that card in combination with having an outlet to use that infinite mana. Welcome to TopDeck.gg, your community's home for everything competitive Magic has to offer. Whether you're hosting an event, playing for a huge prize, or trying to advertise your store to thousands of players, we've got you covered. Using intuitive pairing software, playing Magic is a breeze. All your players have to do is sign up online, then scan the QR code in store. Give your competitors the gift of perfect information as their bracket updates in real time. Then, when the match is decided, our self-reporting software saves you time and leaves paper match slips in the past. Leave the heavy lifting to us so your community can sit back, relax, and have a great day of playing Magic. So, we know about the combos, but how does the deck really play? Like, what is the strength of this deck beyond just that and its mana? This deck is really, really, really good at generating lots and lots of mana. We mentioned the Gaia's Cradle thing. That comes up quite a lot. You get lots of cheap creatures out. We're really fixated and focused on getting Gaia's Cradle into play. We run cards like Expedition Map to go get it. We run cards like Candelabra of Tawnos to be able to untap our Cradle to make more mana. We run cards like Urza Saga to be able to search up Map or Candelabra. Recently, some you'll see on Archdruid's Charm that's able to go get Cradle into play. Currently, I'm not on that, and I'm on Sowing Micah Spawn, which is another way to just put Cradle into play. Straight up untapped, which is pretty powerful. A lot of times this card can be mana positive because we tend to have a lot of creatures. We're very creature heavy and we're not especially weak to Bowmasters. We have only 2 dorks, only birds being the NX one. Like a lot of our creatures don't really die to Bowmasters or aren't super high priority targets at least. So we're able to generate lots of mana to help push through win attempts. Like I think this deck, even though we don't use Thrasios that much as an engine compared to a deck like Bruce Thras or something like that, we're actually in a lot of ways better than them at doing it because we're so heavily prioritizing making large amounts of mana that it's not uncommon for you to be able to go turn 1 Rog and Thras, turn 2 hold up 1 or 2 activations of Thrasios if you don't have anything going for you, or you're waiting to get that dockside count higher for your combos, etc. So we have lots of ways to go big on the mana. We've got, of course, got tons of rocks. Relic of Legends is a card I've been really high on in this deck because it is very sneakily powerful. If you play it with just your commanders in play, it was mana neutral and it mana fixes. It will immediately tap itself for 1 of any color and your Roger and your Thrasios. And we run a decent amount of cheap legends as well. We've run Ragavan, Kennen, Dosen, Baron. These all come up as part of like little bits of mana that you get, and also just having a rock that's basically like a super basalt monolith other than the comboing, but just like a 3 mana rock that taps for 3 and you can split the mana up throughout your turns is really impactful in your ability to like sequence and hold up mana, use a little bit now, activate Thrasios later, have access to your colors and color fix. It's a really powerful card in this deck. It also enables some combo-y stuff that you can do with Cloudstone where you play Ragavan, tap it down with Relic, bounce the Roger, you know, have after tapping it down and are able to go infinite. If you have like it in Cloudstone, you can do that with Magda as well. I was testing Tamiyo again, kind of because of that synergy and also just to see if it's okay, but so far it doesn't seem like it's going to make my list. And the other things we can do with our big mana, when I was on Hullbreaker, that was one thing, but also now we can use things like Seedborn Muse. If you have 8-ish mana in play and you cast the Seedborn Muse, you're probably not going to lose. You're going to activate Thrasios twice on each of your opponent's turns, draw 6 cards, get some selection, put more lands into play potentially, and you're going to take over the game really quickly. And also because we make so much mana, powering out something like a turn 2 Consecrated Sphinx is pretty reasonable and realistic to do in this deck. So some of the key cards, like we've mentioned, are Cloudstone Curio, Basalt Monolith, Machine God's Effigy, Relic of Legends, in terms of like a lot of the both combo-y things and powerful enablers for us. While we're a creature combo deck, we're also a pretty big artifact combo deck. So cards like Trophy Mage are super high priority in your ability to just pivot between game plans, where an opener with an early Trophy Mage, any draw can just set you in a direction to go for a win pretty quickly. You know, I get the Kennen or a way to get it. Any creature tutor instantly becomes, all right, I can get this, you know, I can Eldritch Evolution Roger into Kennen with my Trophy Mage that got Basalt, or I can get Dockside with my Trophy Mage that got Cloudstone. Similarly, you can also get some of the value cards, like I mentioned, like Relic of Legends. And currently I'm on Curse Mirror because, again, we highly prioritize Trophy Mage, and being able to go get a clone at that is pretty nice as well. And then Tezzeret performs a similar function, more mana efficient often, a little bit easier to interact interact with. But once Tezzert's in play, he's just the GOAT. He's just so good at being able to do whatever you need. You can use him -4 and get any artifact out of your deck. You can get a clone, you can get Cursed Mirror, Phyrexian Metamorph, Relic of Legends, One Ring, Machine God's Effigy. And I think I've used him for a lot of different things. I've -1'd him to get Candelabra. I've plussed him to untap artifacts. There's a lot of different things you can do in the deck. Again, because we're pretty heavy on the artifact synergies and the combos, we have cards like Transmute Artifact, which can also be a huge bit of utility. Between these effects and cards like Neoform, Finale, Eldritch Evolution, your ability to find one half of a combo and immediately get that next half very quickly is pretty strong and is pretty consistent, especially again because we net more mana. I think a lot of times, there are games where maybe you're running, with similar draws, similar quality of draws, you're still like 2 mana above, most of the people at the table. And there are absolutely games where if your draws are just a bit hotter than everyone else, you just have more mana than the rest of the table straight up. Candelabra Cradle can absolutely just blow out a game where you're able to just keep pushing and do these kind of relatively inefficient combo lines without it being a big deal. I've had like turn 4s where my win attempt costs 19 mana to set up infinite mana loops because I just have it lying around. And if it fails, having that fail case of, okay, Thrasios with, 10 mana lying around, it's pretty good. Another part of the big mana package that I'm currently on, I've tried the deck without it and with it, and that's Earthcraft, which is 1 and a green, tap and untap creature you control, untap target basic land. You can go pretty heavy on how you want to build around this card, or you can go relatively light. I've played both ways. Currently, I'm somewhere in the middle where I'm not running a card like Shrieking Drake that can easily go infinite with Earthcraft and a land enchantment. And I'm a little bit lower on the land-based enchantments because Utopia Sprawl is kind of awkward and Fertile Ground is a little expensive, but I might be running that one soon. And we don't really have to warp our mana base around this card. I run a basic forest, a basic island, and Prismatic Vista. If I'm conscious of it and I'm thinking about it's even a possibility to draw, a lot of times because we are just blue, green, splashing red, fetching for a basic at some point isn't a huge cost. Hand dependent, it could be, and it can be tough. I found that ultimately it's not too big of an ask. And when you get to do Earthcraft, it can be the deck at its most powerful because suddenly you have like a 2 mana Relic of Legends. Any creature you play, you get to use it, play a 1-drop, tap it, play another 1-drop, tap that, play a 2-drop. It can go crazy. It's pretty cute with like Gilded Drake, ETB on the stack, tap the Drake down, get their creature, tap that creature. And you can run things to help you go infinite with it, but just running it for mana is pretty busted. It can lead to really insane starts that don't seem that scary. And that's one thing I really like about the cards like Relic of Legends and Earthcraft is they don't feel like cards you should Fierce Guardianship or Force a Negation, especially in early games where I go turn 1 Relic or turn 1 Earthcraft. It doesn't feel correct to counter those cards, but a lot of times they lead to a Dockside Extortionist level of just breaking mana wide open and pushing you ahead that puts people in an awkward spot to play against you. Another part of that Earthcraft package currently that I'm on is Lorien Revealed to have a bit of ability to convert colorless into a land drop, and then also have another way to go get like that basic island. So we've went over a lot of the main packages and what we're trying to do. So let's kind of go through each of the card types and go over generally what we're trying to get out of a lot of these cards, right? So we've got kind of mana accelerants, just generically good cards like our Dorks and Ragavan. Cloud of Fairies, I've used as a ritual with Gaia's Cradle in play and just, any other land, sometimes an Ancient Tomb, to just make a bunch of mana. And then again, you can go infinite with it and Cloudstone Curio if you've got a Cradle in play and a blue land. That's nice. Druid, Dockside, we kind of went over what these are for. Flesh Duplicate is a clone that can go infinite with Baron. Works better with Hullbreaker Horror if you're playing that. This is just mostly better than Fimage. I'm not currently on Fimage. If you wanted to double up on this effect, you could, but running Flesh Duplicate, Phyrexian Metamorph, and now Cursed Mirror, I don't think I want a 4th clone, and I'm not sure if I would cut any of these for Phantasmal Image. Gilded Drake is a card that my stocks are pretty high on. For me, I evaluate it pretty highly. A lot of mid-rangey games, especially against like really commander-centric decks that get to like crazy Jeweled Lotus starts, Gilded Drake can be a great way to potentially get a big boost of advantage yourself, depending on what it is, and then also just really set back some people. We're generally a pretty proactive deck, and I don't run a lot of cards purely to be disruptive, but Gilded Drake can do so much on a creature specifically, which is so easy to go find with your Neoforms, your Finales, whatever, that I do think it's worth the slot. I don't know if it's better than Volatile Stormdrake. It's something I've considered. I do like having at least one card in this sort of slot. Kinnan is just a busted magic card. It goes infinite with our Basalt. It makes our dorks and our treasures and all that better. The Goblin is kind of bad. We can't really use the red mana with the way the deck's currently constructed. I've thought about doing builds that lean more heavily into red, and I think they kind of play worse, but maybe there's something there. So this is one of the few cards that is basically only here to combo and can do very little beyond that, other than maybe helping you power out an early Con Sphinx or Seedborn Muse sometimes. Baron, again, here mostly to combo, has more utility over Temur Sabertooth. It's cheaper. It's easier to find off of, for instance, Neoforming Thrasios into Baron, whereas you'd have to Eldritch Thrasios into Temur Sabertooth. Both of those cards work to get Baron, and Baron also does a thing. You can just, activate him, return target creature to owner's hand. You can do some little political plays. I haven't seen a lot of it, and it is a 1/1, so it gets demolished by Bowmasters. It's a card that I was off for a little bit, and I'm on now, and we'll see how it goes. Dosen is my goat. You know that I love defense grids and silences and all that stuff. Being able to just put a Dosen into play and watch everybody, just fall apart because there's nothing they can do about it. You gotta love it. Eternal Witness is a decent utility card to be able to put into play and get back tutor, something like that. Also is part of our loops outside of Finale of Devastation, so not a card I don't think we can cut. Some people talked about, once 6 got printed, cutting Eternal Witness, but they have a pretty different function where most of the time when I Eternal Witness, it's either getting me back like a creature tutor or a counter spell. Maybe it is like a Dockside that got Force of Willed, but not that often. Or it's being used to loop with Snap and Lightning Bolt, and none of those things 6 is especially good at other than recasting Dockside, and even that is situational. Imp Recruiter gets most of the creatures that we're going to want to see, so it is just a slam dunk in this deck. Spellseeker gets most of the instants and sorceries that we're playing. It gets Finale, Neoform, Transmute. Most of the time, those are going to be good enough. It would be nice if it could get Eldritch or Wheel. I would not complain at all if it could. There's definitely been scenarios I wish I could do that. We work with what we got. Majority of our instants are going to be covered by that as well. Trophy Mage, I already talked this one up. Gets so much utility on the 3 mana artifacts. Metamorph, access to another clone, it being at the mana value 4 is really nice. Gives us a lot of utility to, with our Neoforms, Eldritches, all that stuff I've been talking about, have different options. It's also been cute that I've been able to transmute artifact and no one is thinking about Phyrexian Metamorph. They're always thinking about Cloudstone or whatever, and they check the Dockside count. If it's low, they don't care, and then I have Phyrexian Metamorph and copy their Bowmasters or whatever. Mycospawn, we're a pretty heavy land utility deck. We'll go over some of the other utility lines we're running. We're big on the Crop Rots. Any way that we can get Cradle into play, great card. And we've pretty well gone over Seedborn and Con Sphinx. They're just big ol' win the game, shut the game. The door is closed kind of cards. Our tutors we've covered pretty well. Lauren Revealed is a pretty mid card in our format, but I think is worth the slot currently. It isn't a must run for me though. Wheel of Fortune, I'm much higher on than I was when I initially got into this deck. This deck makes a lot of mana. This deck wants to push win attempts over and over once it's, ready to do the thing. Wheel specifically over Twister, I like a lot better now that we're on 6. Oh, which I guess I didn't go over, but 6 is a phenomenal engine. There's no combos with it. It just really is phenomenal at getting you back into a game, helping you get the land drops, getting utility when you're flooded, being able to just refire things like Docksides over and over, like being able to go Dockside, sack it to an Eldritch Evolution, retrace Dockside with 6. This is just a super powerful card that doesn't have any combo or anything, any specific synergy that makes it a must run or a auto include in this deck, but we're such a permanent based strategy that 6 offers just a ton of utility, kind of an inevitability, and again is one of those sneaky engines that you can't really force a wheel to turn 1/6, but you might lose because you didn't. But anyways, wheels. Also 6. When I wheel and 6 is in play, I have won the game all the times that I've done that. I'm really high on Wheel of Fortune. We're using our graveyard a little bit more now. I was running Wheel and Windfall. I think you could do that or run Wheel Twister or run Wheel of Misfortune. Any combination of those. I don't know that I would go to 3 wheels, but I like 2 and how it played. I could see myself going back up on the Windfall. Instance, we're not really a counterspell deck. We're not here to sit around and activate Thrasios all day and, win with overwhelming cards in our hand. We're usually winning with overwhelming mana and just ability to keep pushing, and how every card, anytime we get stopped, a new draw just is another way to push. So we slant pretty proactive with our counterspells. I only recently added Force of Negation to the list. I wasn't on it for a while. But yeah, cards like Pact. I'm running the 1 Red Blast, Misstep. I want stuff that's cheap. I want stuff that always plays winds like Flusterstorm. The flares are phenomenal additions to this deck. Don't worry about sacrificing your Thrasios. When you make infinite mana, guess what? He'll be right there when you need him. We also got little trophy mages and spell seekers to sack to it. It's fine. We'll figure it out. Flare of Duplication is phenomenal. I haven't even got to do anything super broken with it, but I've copied counter spells, copied demonic tutors, copied extra turn spells. It's a busted card. We have Rograkh. We don't sacrifice him other than to this card. Also, if you get to sack Dockside and get it off the table, it can be really nice too. We probably more than almost any deck that plays it can overload a Psych Rift pretty reasonably. It's like us and Kinnan. Cards like Snap, of course, have double duty for us. We're on the one Veil. You could run both. Worldly Tutor, honestly, and I was talking to Sam Black about this, he was kind of mid on it as well. Mystical Tutor I was on, I think kind of sucked. It's just awkward. Worldly is probably still just a little too good to cut. Another little bit of power creep, or we get pushed in a different direction. I could see a world where you reasonably don't run the card, but it is good. Muddle I'm only recently on. Again, it's like an uncounterable tutor. I don't ever want to use it to counter target instant or sorcery, but you know, you can. Force, MBT, Fierce, SWAT, kind of cards you have to run. Our artifacts, stuff you'd expect. We're running most of the fast mana. Candelabra, it's really good. You know, really good with Cradle. It's really good when you get to do something like Cradle and Manamo, especially. It's really busted. Like the mana fixing on Candelabra is actually decently relevant, especially when you're doing like, you know, you leading on Crypts and Soul Rings and stuff like that. Expedition map, utility lands, it's mainly for Cradle, but I've used it to get Beseiju or Artawara, things like that. And now we've got some new utility lands we'll go over. Rocks, we're a good Springleaf Drum deck. Cloudstone Basalt, these are our main combo lines. Relic of Legends is an amazing bit of mana acceleration for the deck. We're a really good one ring deck. Doesn't take a lot for us to be able to combo. We don't usually need to draw 50 cards with it, but if you can get it down with a Seaborn Muse, of course, you're almost certainly going to win that game. Curse Mirror, I don't have any games with yet, but I kind of expect to do well, but we'll see. Enchantments, Mystic Ristic, busted. Earthcraft, we went over this one. Wild Growth, it's okay. It's better than a mono green dork because it can pay for itself most turns. The turn it comes down, right? I don't think it's a must run. It does get better with Earthcraft. Fertile Ground, I like too and might come back in the list, but Wild Growth is one of those cards like you don't love to run it, but it's pretty good at what it does and you wouldn't really want to cut it. And then lands, we're at 28 right now. We've got kind of staples, Ancient Tomb, our fetches and shocks and duels. We're a great emergent zone deck. We're already on this land utility thing, being able to crack it and win instant speed, phenomenal. Hedge Maze, phenomenal. If you put it into play on Thrasios, it feels amazing. Manamo, we're a one ring deck. We're a Relic of Legends deck, if that ever comes up, I guess for mana fixing maybe. And we're a Cradle deck. It works with all those things. It's just a great bit of utility that doesn't have enough of a cost on it to make it not worth running. We got the basics. Shifting Woodlands, one of the newer ones that's come out. Still testing this card, but it seems very powerful. Again, you looked at all our combos, right? You saw how most of those were based on permanents. And then a new one, Talon Gates of Madara. When it enters, it phases out a creature, which is just a wild thing to have on a land that comes in untapped. And then you can mana fix with it for 1 mana, and you can spend 4 to put it into play. Again, a card I haven't played a lot of yet. Fully expect it to be stupid at some point, because just having the ability to turn off a Hate Bear on your land drop is just not something we've really seen, especially at this like kind of rate of untapped. No delirium or threshold or anything required. It just enters and it does it. Saga, we have a decent amount of targets. This one I'm still iffier on. I don't know. You don't have to run this card. If you want to go 27 lands, you could cut it. I think Sink into Stupor is a consideration. I kind of like having 28 actual lands because I like, one, my land count being kind of high, and then also they're really nice with 6. You could like cut the Saga, whatever, especially if you don't run Candle or Map, but I do think those cards go in like the optimized version of this list. So how do we mulligan with this deck? You're really looking for a combination of mana and payoff. You kind of play it like it's Rograkh. So this hand, not the fastest in the world, but lets us go, you know, turn 1, land, Mox Diamond, Signet, or we could do land, Mox Diamond, Thras. I'm more likely to play Signet because I'm going to want the kind of the extra mana on turn 2, I think. Hold up a mana, we can Lorien Revealed to get another land drop. And then we have Imp Recruiter to go find a way to win. We're kind of looking for a second half of a combo here, maybe before we Imp Recruiter. You can just Imp Recruiter and just raw go get Dockside, but if count isn't especially high, I might just sit on the Imp Recruiter for a little bit until I find like a definitive way to get to the next piece, but let's see what we draw for turn. Okay, Seaborn Muse gives us a pretty good plan. It's a little bit slower. This isn't like the turbo big old mana kind of start you can have, but it's not a bad one. You're gonna have a little bit slower of a start. You have draws where you just win the game. If Dockside count is high enough, you can just outright go pretty crazy. It's an okay hand. Okay, well, this is not a keep. 6 lands. We like lands. We love Cradle, but you can't keep these. Okay, this is one of those starts that is a bit of a banger, but is also very much resigned to doing the Thrasios thing. Being able to go turn 1 Relic of Legends plus like dump your hands or, and your command zone isn't bad, but you are going to be just in top deck mode. So the fact that you have a Fierce Guardianship and you're going to have a lot of mana isn't too bad. Being able to go, like Gemstone, maybe pitch Cloud of Fairies, you might want to keep it, I'm not sure. And then just going like Land, Crypt, Relic, Rog, Thras can be pretty good. Plus our draw for turn, Mox Hammer. Well, we have plenty of mana. We can do the Thras thing. This is a pretty cool one. We're seeing a lot of Gemstone Caverns. So I think we're going to go like Gemstone pitching Dosin. I don't think I'd be inclined to turn 1 wheel. We're not going to have the mana to make that reasonable. But being able to potentially sequence like turn 2 Dockside into wheel if count is high enough is something I might be down for. Our draw is Mana Crypt where, hey, maybe you can just turn 1 wheel. This is a pretty cool one where we get to go just turn 1 Mystic, maybe off the basic. Play Cradle, turn 2, where we have like Cradle and Roger. And depending on what we draw, maybe we can get some more mana. But like one thing that's really cool about this deck is it's exclusive to Roger decks that Gaia's Cradle is always online. It can be your only land and it can function because Roger turns it on, especially if there's no Drannith Magistrate player in front of you. You got it. Your Cradle's good. Ooh, this would be a hot one. It's a lot of mana into a really early Tezzeret plus Eldritch Evolution get us any half of our combos. We can do a really early Devoted Druid Machine God's Effigy. Potentially, if Dockside counts high enough, this is just a pretty easy win where we can potentially go, Eldritch away our Rograkh into a Dockside, make mana, play Tezzeret, get Cloudstone Curio, and then if we have enough mana lying around, we can just start the loop from there. Potentially, you might just want to sequence it differently where you maybe Tezzeret first or Eldritch for like Cannon and then Tezzeret for Basalt, whatever. This would be a pretty good hand, although it is like sending everything raw, but also if you don't feel safe, this is a hand that is going to generate a decent enough amount of mana to where you can kind of sit back on Thrasios a little bit, interact with the table, stuff like that if you want to. The draw being Neoform just opens up our options a decent bit to potentially have cheaper lines. This deck to me plays like a really cool take on something like Rograkh Silas, where you are kind of pushing early-ish win attempts, but you get to do things a little bit differently. You're not quite storming and you're doing more of the big kind of Timmy, lots of mana things. It works like a really interesting puzzle a lot of times where you have one tutor in your hand and you're like, how do I go from Spellseeker here to just pure win? Lots of really interesting options that you get. You win in tons of different ways. It's just a ton of fun. I really love it. I think it's probably a top 5-ish deck. Maybe not proven to be that yet, but I think it has that potential right now with the cards that are out and what the metagame looks like. I think it's super powerful. We're still figuring it out. Don't look at this as a definitive guide to how the deck should be built and how it works, blah, blah, blah. But hopefully, this has let you know a little bit more about how this deck operates, why you might want to play it. If you love doing big mana, big creature stuff, if you love having turn 1 Roger every single game, enabling your broken stuff, and everybody's worried about your Fierces and your Flare of Duplications now, you just get to do broken stuff in a different way that isn't just Breach, Thoracle, Console, blah, 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 and still having some of the strengths of those decks, right? You still get to do turn 1 Rhystic Study and the whole table groans and you just automatically win, but you get to do it in a more interesting shell, in my opinion. So let me know down below if you're going to try this deck out, what your favorite deck in cEDH is, and what you want me to cover next. With all that being said, thank you so much for watching, and as always, go play cEDH. Have a good one, everybody.